Boeing is under investigation by the Federal Aviation Administration after a door plug fell out of the fuselage of an Alaskan Airlines plane during a flight on Saturday. You've probably seen the video of that. Thankfully, there were no serious injuries. Investigators from the National Transportation Safety Board are examining why that just happened. So right now, joining us is aviation attorney Andrew Duke Maloney. Andrew, thank you very much, Duke, for joining us this morning. We got a lot to talk about.
My pleasure.
So this conversation, I feel like, is happening at either every dinner table. Certainly, we've talked about it here in the newsroom. Is how much money are these passengers going to get from this incident?
The passengers on the Alaska Air flight?
Yeah.
That's something that I don't want to speculate on that. Certainly, they went through a traumatic experience. I did represent many of the passengers on the Hudson River water landing with Sully, the Sullenberger incident where they had a double flame out from bird strikes.
Yeah.
And there was compensation given. We worked it out. There was no lawsuit from that case. The actions of the flight crew in that case were heroic. And I think, frankly, here, the actions of the flight crew at Alaska Airlines were also heroic. This is really a Boeing issue more than Alaska Airlines in terms of compensation. That remains to be seen. But passengers on that plane, I would not be surprised if they are suffering from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, which is a real injury, and they are entitled to compensation.
Yeah. Well, kind of piggybacking off of that as well, is that something, I was reading about this last night, is that something that would be a Boeing responsibility? Would that be more of, I believe it's Spirit Aviation, the one that actually built the fuselage itself, or is it sort of a combination of that, depending on whatever the injuries are, or where the whole litigation goes from there?
Yeah, it would certainly be a combination of those two entities. Boeing is the primary, they're the original equipment manufacturer, so they're primarily responsible. So, for example, if there was a lawsuit and you sued only Boeing, Boeing would likely bring in as a third party the other subcontractor, but legally that's not required for a plaintiff. The plaintiff can go for the original equipment manufacturer here, which is Boeing, because Boeing is responsible for the work of its subcontractors. Are responsible entirely for their product that they put out.
Yeah, I remember seeing an interview, I believe it was yesterday, with the Boeing CEO, and it said, hey, it missed their checks, it missed ours as well, so we're just as responsible for that. So it's certainly in line with what you were saying. So you represented families that lost loved ones in the 2019 Ethiopian Airlines crash. Now, that was a Boeing 737 MAX 8. This is the MAX 9 that we're talking about here with the Alaskan Airlines. That company was fined as well. I have to believe, are there similarities in these two cases, even though we're talking about different planes themselves?
Yeah, it's not so much the different model aircraft. The MAX line is Boeing's latest product in competition with Airbus. There are some similarities in the sense that there's a cultural problem, I think, at Boeing, and I'll come back to that in a second. The 737 MAX 8 crashes involved a design defect. It was software that was in the autopilot that actually took over the plane and pointed the nose down. They had to put that in there because when they redesigned the MAX 8 with larger engines, it caused the nose of that plane to fly up. And so the software they designed automatically brought the nose down. But in the case of the two crashes, that design actually was given faulty readings and took over the plane and crashed those two planes. What we have in the Alaska Air, recent Alaska Air case is what I would consider to be not a design defect, but a manufacturing defect in assembly. So somebody or a series of people on the assembly line screwed up. They either forgot to put the bolts in or didn't torque them appropriately. And it's not just one person. There is a series of safety checks along the way where everybody's work gets a second set, a third set of eyes, and they sign off on it that it was done properly. So if you forgot to put bolts in or you didn't tighten them and torque them correctly, somebody else along the line is supposed to be able to spot that and remedy that and fix it. That did not occur here. So it looks like there is still a cultural problem on safety at Boeing in rushing to get products out the door to compete with Airbus, which is what happened with the MAX 8. So in that sense, there is a similar issue at the Boeing plants in terms of, I think, sloppiness. Boeing has long been known for generations as being a company run by the aerospace engineers, one of some of the best in the world. I think that has changed in recent years, partly due to competition, partly due for board members who are seeking profit. I don't know what the reason for it is, but they've gotten away from the historical great reputation they've had for so long, and they need to fix that.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. That was actually something I was sort of thinking about last night, is that we're talking about a company, Boeing here, that's been a leader, a pioneer in domestic and commercial aviation for decades at this point. And we're now starting to see, 2019, well, 2017, I believe was the other crash, and of course, this fuselage blowout. As an aviation attorney, someone that sort of is knee-deep in this 24/7, sounds like you have concerns as well about the fact that we're talking about, a company that's a pioneer, that people put their trust, not only with their lives, but their families' lives, and things are getting missed when they're trying to get things out quickly.
That's exactly what I'm saying. It's very, very troubling to see a company that was really the gold standard on engineering and aerospace technology leading the field for so long to now have essentially dropped the ball. And we were told and assured during the recent MAX 8 litigation, the Ethiopia crash, that they were making, cultural changes there. The Department of Justice prosecuted them. That was a big area of concern for all of us. It looks like they still have problems there. And the only thing I'll say about this recent incident is that it's a miracle nobody was killed or injured. But if you want to look for a silver lining, it's another wake-up call to Boeing and other manufacturers that it's not just design issues, but it's also the assembly line, the manufacturing process, the testing, the quality control. It's all part of the same culture at Boeing that needs to be vigilant at all times. And they need to change that. I think that the silver lining here is it's a wake-up call, and it was a serious one, and there was no loss of life here. So hopefully now it's gotten their, I'm sure it's gotten their attention. Mm-hmm. Certainly got my attention and the attention of the FAA and the NTSB.
Yeah.
So they will be forced to remedy this assembly line problem that they have.
Yeah.
So that's a silver lining if you want to have a takeaway from it, but
Sure.
It's a serious problem.
Yeah, it sounds like it for sure. And obviously the NTSB, those investigations sometimes can go on for months, even years in some cases as well. Do you think that this wake-up call that you're talking about, and I agree, I think it sounds like it is a wake-up call, given the amount of just the number of people that have seen that video that maybe have even never flown before, that's going to be sticking in their heads at this point. Do you feel like there are temporary changes that will be made in the meantime before we get that final report from the NTSB?
I think they're underway already. I think Boeing already knows or has a pretty good idea what happened here. There are only a few explanations for it. And if it's the assembly process, they need to make sure they take a look internally at their policies, their standing operating procedures, and to essentially root out anybody that works for them in the assembly line or the inspectors to root out the ones that are not doing their job and replace them or get them retrained. I think that's already underway. I don't think they're waiting for the conclusion of the NTSB report to do that. I think this NTSB investigation will go much quicker. There's a very limited universe of things they'll have to look at in this case. Normally in a major airline crash, the NTSB looks at everything and they start to eliminate potential causes of an accident. And very often in major airline disasters, there are a cascading factors. There are multiple contributing factors to the crash. And so they take their time and they investigate all that. And for, in an air disaster, they often have to put the plane back together. They have to recover the flight data recorder, the cockpit voice recorder, things like that. I think in this case, we're talking about a much smaller universe of issues to look at and address and investigate. So I don't think it's going to take the NTSB as long here as it might in a major airline disaster. But I can bet that Boeing is already essentially re-examining what they can do better and fix it.
Yeah, sounds like it as well. Well, we know you and the rest of folks that do the good work that you do will hold them accountable as well.